Hi, I'm Marcy Lundy, and this is a special crossover episode of the Cult of Kindness podcast, as well as Beauty's Aging Gracefully. And I'm thrilled to welcome back someone I consider very near and dear. And I'm so happy to see your hair in curls. Audience, please welcome Teresa Bruni. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you so much. It's so good to see you again.
You too. I was saying before we got started that every time we've been together to record, it's usually in June. So that's our bond, doing things in June.
It's a good
All right.
month. Yeah.
It is a great month, right? Summer.
Yeah.
Well, Teresa is an author, and her latest book, Why You're Sick and How to Get Well, I should say, revealing everything Western medicine isn't telling you, is brand new. And Teresa, if you could give the audience a bit of insight into what caused you to go into writing this book, what was the inspiration, if you will, behind it?
Yeah. So that's a long story that I'm going to have to truncate. Uh, but many years ago, I was struck with a chronic health condition, and I gave first of all, it took 2 years to get a diagnosis, which was a terrible time, not knowing what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And then once I got the diagnosis, I devoted 7 years to medical science in the hope that medicine would get me well, and they failed me. And so because I had such a strong desire to reclaim my life, at the time I was on full disability, and I really wanted my life back. I did not want to live the rest of my life on disability. I just decided that it was time to take matters into my own hands. So the book is somewhat of a chronicle of that journey, and its purpose is for people to be able to learn from the lessons that I learned on my journey through the healthcare system. So yeah, that's what it's all about.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's very needed. A lot of people find themselves in situations where it's like, oh, okay, now I have this condition I have to deal with, and they don't know where to start. So thank you for creating a resource for the people.
My pleasure. I want people to be empowered when it comes to their health. And one thing that I mentioned in the book that I also mention, I often mention this to my individual clients. There's probably nothing more devastating than having a doctor tell you there is no cure.
Mm.
And so what I like to remind people is that, 100 years ago, we didn't even have antibiotics. So there were common things that we couldn't cure, right?
Right.
Bronchitis, okay, didn't have antibiotics. People often died from infections that set in from minor injuries, really. So the point is, when a doctor tells you there is no cure, what they really mean is they just haven't found it yet.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But to have to receive that devastating news, there
Mhm.
is no cure, when the truth is there very well may be a cure out there, but you may have to look outside of traditional Western medicine.
That's true. You have to be open to that.
Yeah.
Yes. One of the things you wrote here in the embrace of surrender, we unlock the dormant power within ourselves. And it is in this surrender we take our first profound step toward healing. I think, oh, that's very powerful. And for yourself, did you find yourself going through, let's say, the 4 stages of grief before you get to the place of acceptance and say, okay, how do I go forward with this?
So for me, I felt a tremendous amount of frustration
Mhm.
uh, because despite, now, Marcy, I was on the East Coast and I had access to some of the best doctors in the country. I was being treated at a university of medicine. Okay. And year after year, no advancement in my healing. So I became quite frustrated, and I discovered surrender quite by accident. When I actually decided, okay, I've had enough, something here has to change. Something has to change because, it's like Einstein's definition. When you do the same thing over and over again, it's called insanity. And when you
Right.
do this, let me rephrase that. When you do the same thing over and over again and the results don't change, you keep getting the same results, it's called
Yeah.
insanity. So,
Yeah.
that's when I finally said, all right, take a deep breath, because this is where you are right
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
Just this tremendous sense of relief came over me, and I was like, okay, I get it. It reminded me of being in the shopping mall and looking for a store and not being able to find it, and then coming across that big kiosk that points out your location that says you are here. Oh my gosh, I finally know where I am, right?
Right.
So that's what surrender is about. Surrendering is just giving up the fight,
Mhm.
because as you read in the book, uh, fighting, we're just taught philosophies that don't benefit our healing, and fighting against your illness is one of them. Okay, if you're fighting against something, you're using up precious resources
That's true.
that should be devoted to your healing.
That's very true.
So that's where surrender comes in.
Yeah, we can use that even for just day-to-day life.
Absolutely. The serenity prayer, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah.
Um, you speak of surrender being an ongoing theme with yourself and clients. Like I said, this is something we can use in day-to-day life. Um, was it hard to get to that place? It sounds like you were almost relieved when you got to it. For those of us that are control freaks, how do we easily get to the place of surrender?
So yeah, I was quite relieved, and it happened strictly by accident. I didn't know that I was surrendering
Mm-hmm.
until I looked back and I said, wow, I surrendered. Okay, now I know where I am.
Yeah.
And I get the whole control freak thing,
Mm-hmm.
because most of us have that. We want to have a sense of control over our lives and what's happening around us. Um, so I will recommend a passage that we're all familiar with:
Mm-hmm.
let go and let God.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Again, that is surrender, when you're willing to release everything, knowing that there's a greater force that's there ready to catch you. That is surrender, and it's a beautiful thing, and it feels beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful way to look at it. Thank you for that. If you could talk a bit about secondary gains.
Great topic. So secondary gains are the benefits that often ride along with negative situations.
Mm.
And so, of course, I'll use a person who has a chronic health condition, and even someone who is maybe on disability.
Mhm.
Okay, there are a lot of secondary gains that come along with that. Um, you tend to get sympathy from other people. Maybe people offer to carry your groceries or help you up the stairs.
Yeah.
Um, you you get, this is a big one. You get a reprieve from day-to-day responsibilities.
Mhm.
because healing is supposed to be your primary objective. So if you're on disability, you're getting that income, but you don't have to go to work, you don't have to get up and go to work for it. So that's a secondary gain. You might have medical benefits that kick in because you're chronically ill. And so all of those things are considered secondary gains. They are the upside to a bad situation.
Sure.
Now, what happens is when we become too comfortable with all of that, we like getting sympathy from others, and we like maybe not having to cook for ourselves or do the dishes anymore. And we like getting that disability check without having to clock in, right? But when we start enjoying those secondary gains too much, that can actually stop us from pursuing wellness.
Sure. My husband, I think I've told you, my husband is disabled. He got into a diving accident when he was 14. And when I first met him, one of the things I told him is, even though you have a disability, I can tell you're not a lazy person. So even though you have these secondary gains, you're someone who wants to work and you want to be a part of the community. And that was admirable to me, because there's so many people who are, enjoying the benefits of secondary gains and have no intention of doing more than that.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, I knew your husband was disabled. I did not know that it was a diving accident. So yeah, he's been living with that for a long time. And yeah, and I admire that as well. So, and I even talk about in the book, maybe I talk about in the book the difference that people need to recognize between disabled and handicapped, right? I don't know if that part kicked in for you, but oftentimes people with a handicap are not necessarily disabled. They're still a functioning part of the workforce.
Sure.
Right. So maybe just because I'm in a wheelchair, it doesn't mean that I can't sit at a keyboard and have a fulfilling job as a customer service rep or a writer for a magazine. So people often get those two terms, they intertwine those two terms, and they really are separate.
That is very true. Yeah. I think in this day and age, brought on also largely by the pandemic, people are opening their eyes to, let's say, requirements that people in the disabled community need, that were used by the able-bodied community during the pandemic. And then it's like, oh, okay, this is a part of their life. And that awareness has opened the doors and the eyes of a lot of people with different things.
Good. That's good. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
You also write that the journey through the healthcare system calls for vigilance on the part of the patient, including an unwavering commitment to ongoing research, meticulous tracking of results, and an attentive reliance on one's intuition. If we could talk a bit about that intuition part, because I think some people might put that aside, but it's really important here.
Yeah, so it's hard when you have a chronic health condition and you just don't feel good to start with. Yeah. We tend to overlook our intuition. The bottom line is, if procedure or a drug or a treatment is recommended by your healthcare professional and your gut says, I don't think that's a good idea, then that's your signal, that's your signal to go do some research. Yes. and find out the pros and cons of whether it be a medication or a procedure or a treatment or whatever. In today's Western medicine, doctors don't always have the time to sit with us and truly explain, what the treatment is going to do, what the potential side effects are,
Yes.
what the recovery rate is. And so listen to that intuition. And if that intuition, kicks off and says, I don't know, then that's your clue to go get some other opinions, if you can do that. And
Yes.
and also to do your research, see what else. I got to the point when I finally made that decision to take a different path. Anything that the doctors recommended to me, that were, I'll classify them as significant,
Right.
I did my best to get 3 opinions.
That's
You
good.
know, so even I had an elective surgery on my knee. I injured my knee. I was still on disability. I injured my knee and I had to go for surgery. The surgeon offered me 3 choices of anesthesia. General anesthesia, which is typically the most risky, an epidural, or a spinal.
Mhm.
And so what I had come to learn is reach out to other people in the business, even if it's your dentist, so I, here it's a knee surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon who's recommending this. I reached out to my general practitioner, and I said, he's giving me these 3 choices. Which would you choose?
Mhm.
I reached out to my ENT, my sinus doctor. I asked him. So I collected opinions of value, right?
Good.
Opinions
Yeah.
of value. Ask
Yeah.
people in the know. What would
That's
you do if this was you?
right.
And so consequently, I made my decision. I ended up getting an epidural.
Wow.
So yeah. So things like that. Yeah, things like
Very good.
that. Yeah.
And I'm sure it's a sobering reality when people realize, your doctor is giving you your initial diagnosis, but like you said, they don't have time to necessarily be, available for every question you have. And that is when you do need to do the research and say, okay, well, you know what? Let me use my resources. I don't know about WebMD. They always caution us against going on there. But yeah, more than one opinion is great.
WebMD has gotten better, but I was watching a rerun of an old sitcom recently, and uh, uh, the 2 people were discussing looking up treatments, and the one person said, oh, you can do that, you can use the internet to, and the other person said, sure, you just type in whatever your symptom is and it comes back, you've got cancer. So in the beginning, that's what some of these resources were like. It didn't
Yeah,
matter what you typed in, it just said, hurry up and make an appointment with your doctor because you could
right.
potentially have cancer.
It's true.
So, I reiterate in the book, use reliable sources. Use
Yeah,
reliable sources.
absolutely.
It is truly unfortunate what has happened to our healthcare system. There was a time when doctors knew you personally.
That's
You know,
true.
they knew their patients personally, and if
Mm.
you were sick, they'd say, "Okay, Marcy, what's been going on?
Yeah,
What's troubling you?"
yeah,
It's not like that anymore. Doctors have quotas and they've got to fulfill those quotas.
yeah,
So, a lot of really conscientious doctors don't like the system any more than we do. And in the book, I talk about the reality of our healthcare system here in the United States.
yeah.
Medical malpractice is the 3rd leading cause of death.
Ugh,
You need to know that.
yeah,
You need to know that.
that's a scary thought.
It is, but it's the truth.
Yeah, yes.
So
Thank
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I read that, and That's especially when that's what you're relying on, and then you use the resource that you feel is the best method. And here you are uh, at death's door sooner than you would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could talk about the importance of understanding your body.
Yeah. So this is another thing that has happened over, I will say, the last 100 years, 150 years, as Western medicine began to become more and more developed. We've been taught that we can't heal without medical intervention. That's one thing we've been taught.
Right.
And Western medicine looks at the body kind of like a machine. And oh, that part is broken. Let's replace it. Let's cut it out and replace it. Oh,
Face.
you have a tumor. You have a tumor. Let's cut it out or let's radiate it.
Yeah.
Uh, the bottom line is your body is so intelligent and it's a messenger to us. So simple, very simple example. You've spent too much time in front of the computer and you're getting a headache.
Mm,
That's your body telling you, hey, I'm under strain. I need you to move away from this computer and take a break. And
exactly.
it goes from there all the way up to cancer.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone who is dealing with cancer, there are messages related to that. The primary message behind cancer is typically a need to forgive,
Mm,
but then we have to look at what kind of cancer it is.
true.
Okay, different organs store different emotions. So I know I'm probably going a little bit too deep too quickly,
No.
but when you recognize that the body is incredibly intelligent and it is a messenger. So when you get sick, it's trying to communicate with you. And then when we give it what it needs, it has this miraculous ability to heal.
Yes, that's true.
That's all the body wants to do is heal. It fights every day to heal.
That's so
Yes.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always amazing to, even if you just get a cut, to see how it can repair itself, its process.
Uh-huh. Call me crazy, but when I get a cut, I love to watch it heal. I love to look at it every day and say, wow, look at the skin is closed up. And it's because when you start to recognize how miraculous your body really is, then
Mhm.
it's even more your body even becomes more content to cooperate with you.
That's true. Great
Yeah.
point. Let's talk about the unfortunate stress in health.
So you're talking about how stress damages our health? Okay.
Exactly.
So stress is the number one contributor to chronic health conditions. And I go into that's probably the longest chapter in the book is the chapter on stress because I break down the different types of stress that we have. And
Right.
that helps the individual to be able to come up with strategies to manage that stress. But in a nutshell, what happens is when we're stressed, our body turns on a mechanism called fight, flight, or freeze. And when that happens, the body releases cortisol and adrenaline to help us protect and defend ourselves. Cortisol and adrenaline are damaging to the immune system. So when you're stressed, you're turning off your body's ability to heal.
Right.
Okay. So, any example from simple to extreme. Your you're driving to work, you've got an important meeting, and you're on a major highway, there's an accident, and now you're stuck. Okay. And so bam, that fight or flight goes off, and you're like, I'm gonna be late. And we start, some of us start falling into a deeper amount of stress because, as we mentioned a moment ago, it's something we have no control over.
Certainly.
And we all like to have control, right? So,
Yes.
so there's two ways to handle that. You can allow your body to jump into fight or flight,
Mhm.
or again, you can surrender and say, okay, I don't have any control over the fact that I'm stuck in this traffic jam. However, I do have control over how I view this, what I do with my time, and I can look for another way out of this. You know, I'm from New Jersey, and when you get in a major traffic jam on a major highway, oftentimes your next exit is like miles away. You know?
Oh,
You're
oh my
not
God.
going anywhere quickly. So,
Yeah.
so again, learning to surrender and to use that time to benefit yourself. So that's one example. That's a simple example of stress. Now, the book actually goes into deeper causes of stress. As you are familiar with my story, I suffered a lot of childhood traumas that were left unresolved.
Yes.
And what I learned was that when we are traumatized, and if that trauma is not addressed, then our bodies get caught in fight or flight. So anyone who has been abused or has seen someone else be abused,
Yeah.
that can get stuck in the body. And so we're always hyper alert. We're always, looking over our shoulders, so to speak.
Sure.
And when we do that, we're living in fight or flight. Adrenaline and cortisol are being released, and
Yes.
we are damaging our immune system, and we're opening the door to chronic health conditions.
Oh, which is so scary. And there's so many people who don't realize those connections, that, oh, I'm carrying this and I'm carrying it into my day-to-day life, creating so many issues.
Yeah. And so that's why it's so important to become an empowered patient and to educate yourself. And reading my book is a great starting place, because most doctors, you go to your general practitioner and you say, I'm getting sick, I don't feel good. They run blood work. They tell you, well, we don't see anything abnormal. So they tell you there's nothing wrong with you. And,
Right.
and now you're going down that road. It was only through discovering, well, two things. It happened to me twofold. As I started to clear up my traumas,
Yes.
my health began to improve.
Mm.
And I noticed that
Yeah.
it was so obvious to me. Okay. I noticed that as I started to deal with these feelings of insecurity, these feelings of deep-seated fear, my health started to improve. And then, because I was so fascinated by what I learned on my journey, I discovered the book. The book is called The Body Keeps the Score, and I talk about that book in my book. And
Yes.
that is written by the world's leading trauma expert.
Yes.
And he talks about how trauma gets stored in the body, and hence the title of the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Good.
And it's only until you start to deal with those traumas, and they can be healed. Traumas can be healed.
That's very true. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one thing.
Yeah. So again, so that's another example of fight or flight and stress. You asked me to speak about stress. So we went from a very simple example of getting caught in a traffic jam to the extreme, and that would be having unresolved traumas.
That's right. I wanted to talk about the underlying causes. Definitely, these hidden traumas are a part of that. Are there any other underlying causes that people should be on the lookout for in regards to health, genetics, and things like that?
Yeah, so and I cover pretty much almost everything in the book, you know. I just want to show your audience the book. This
Yes,
is the book if you're looking for it online. If
yes,
you just do a search for Why You're Sick and my last name, it'll come right up for you. Um, uh, I talk about generational traumas. So I'm going to use let's see, what could I use as a good example? I'm going to use breast cancer.
okay,
Okay, so maybe I'm working with someone who has been diagnosed with breast cancer, and their mother lost her life to breast cancer, their grandmother, their aunt, their cousin. So there's this huge history of breast cancer in the family. I would start to look at generational trauma. So what happens with generational trauma is, and this has to do with epigenetics, which I talk about in the book as well. Trauma gets stuck in our DNA. And so it comes down from generation to generation. That's why you see patterns repeat themselves from one generation to the next. A perfect example of generational trauma is the disease of alcoholism that is suffered by American Indians.
that's correct.
Okay, so originally, their ancestors self-medicated with alcohol. They didn't know any other way. That
Right.
trauma, so it's not the alcoholism necessarily that gets embedded into the DNA, but it's the trauma that comes down, you know. And I give numerous examples in the book, African Americans and the trauma, the fear, what the people suffered during slavery, and that fear getting in the DNA and coming down generation to generation. Interestingly, hypertension is a very common diagnosis for African Americans. And in the books that I use, that we talk about what message is the body trying to send.
Right.
uh, Hypertension is extreme fear.
Mm,
So it kind of points to you that it's in the DNA. Um, we also know that even, what are we talking, 100 years after the
right.
Holocaust, and I don't think it's quite 100, but I'm not a big history buff, so work with me here. um, um, Young people, children of Holocaust survivors, still suffer from the stress that has come down in the DNA. So that's where epigenetics comes in. We have the power to change our DNA. For years, they told us we didn't. You
Yes.
know, you're stuck with it, Marcy. Whatever DNA you have, you're stuck with it, right? Not
Yeah.
true. Not true. We can now change our DNA through epigenetics, and I give a lot of examples in the book about that too. So that's when I say you've got to get to the root cause of your illness. These are some examples of what I'm talking about. And your general practitioner, even your specialist, isn't likely to go there, because that's not how Western medicine is wired.
Correct.
They are looking for the mechanics.
That's true. Yeah. And I, aside for just knowing for yourself, when you start opening your mind up to all of these other components, it's like, oh my gosh. And the work that you can do on yourself is immeasurable.
Yeah. So, and some of my clients even like to investigate past life traumas, you know, so I always work with my clients. I meet them where they are, and I have some clients that say, no, that's against my religious beliefs. I don't even want to talk about that. That's fine. I'm not here to change your belief system. But what I did, once I got the book written, which was a true labor of love, I then created the companion workbook.
Oh yeah.
And the companion workbook, this is developed for someone who wants to work on their own, and especially for people who their health has gotten so bad that they just don't have the money to work with me one-to-one. And so this book has 130 exercises, and charts and graphs, to help a person kind of go through this self-healing. Now, you got to remember, I did this on my own. Okay. So I believe everybody can do it. You just have to have a strong desire, and you have to do the work.
The work, that part. Yes.
And you had asked me a little while back about tracking. Tracking is vital, because oftentimes we don't we get sick very slowly. Okay, so most of us don't wake up one morning and all of a sudden have a chronic health diagnosis. Typically, it comes on slowly. Yeah, we're not feeling so good. Certain foods start to bother us, things like that. And then eventually we go to the doctor and we find out we have a chronic health condition. Well, reversing that works in the same slow fashion. So I can only quote one of my clients who was really resistant to doing tracking. He thought it was a waste of time.
Uh-oh.
And then, and then months later he said, boy, am I glad you made me do this tracking, because I can see on paper that I'm getting well,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So you gotta put a little bit of trust in that. I know what I'm talking about when I ask you to track your days, track
So
your sleep, track your days. If you go on a new medication, track it.
mhm. It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And it's like people may want instant answers and results, but in this particular regard, it's like, oh no, just slow, you'll see the progress and understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sadly, there are no instant results. Yeah.
Sadly, for not only the control freaks, for the people who cannot wait.
And I got to tell you, I used to say to myself, so I was sick for 2 years, trying to get a diagnosis. Then I was on full disability for 9 years, and over the course of all of that, it took me 3 years to recover. And again, I didn't have a book like this. I didn't have a health coach. All I had, was my inner knowing,
Mm.
and the library and the bookstores. But so I thought I had learned patience. When I finally got ready to go back to work, when I finally got ready to go back to work, I said, if only one lesson came out of this, it was patience.
Yeah.
Marcy, we are not patient people. We just aren't. And I don't think we were ever meant to be patient.
This is true.
So, so just be kind. Just be kind to yourself, just be kind to yourself.
That's true. And Teresa, I wrote a review with pleasure. I wrote a review about your book. And one of the things that I mentioned was the thought behind how you wrote the book. And, to add a space where people can track, this is so important because, like you said, you go to your usual physician. This is not necessarily something they're going to provide for you. So that thoughtful addition is invaluable. That's so good that you did that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hope it provides a great resource for people.
Yeah. I hope so too. Now let's talk about the importance of sleep, from sleep environment to helpful and healthy remedies, because so many of us are not getting the sleep we need.
Yeah, so that comes right back around to stress. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so most people live a very busy lifestyle.
Mm.
Um, they have careers, they have goals, they have partnerships, business and personal partnerships, children, maybe elders that they need to care for. Life can get really, really busy. And then you go to bed exhausted. And if you don't set yourself up for a good night's sleep, guess what? You wake up with that same exhaustion.
True.
Okay.
True.
And and if you go to your physician and say that you've got sleep, you can't sleep, chances are they're going to hand you a pharmaceutical. Those
Mm.
pharmaceuticals all have side effects. And um, so I'm not going to tell you never to take them. Just know that they should be a short-term solution.
Yeah.
Okay, that help you get some rest while you figure out how to restructure your stressful life and how to manage your stress.
Certainly.
So there are a lot of things that we can do. We must find time to fit it in to our lifestyle. Okay, turn off the screens an hour before bed.
Mhm.
Set your bedroom up so that it is conducive to sleep.
Yes.
Okay, pretty, cool, dark. It should be a sanctuary for sleep. I know this is a tough one for a lot of people, but get the television out of the bedroom.
Yes.
You don't watch television in the bedroom. Um, um, so what typically happens, I think for most people, you crawl into bed, your head hits the pillow, and you start thinking about everything you didn't get done, right?
Terrible.
And you're supposed to be going to sleep and your mind
Yeah.
is racing, like, I have to do all of that tomorrow. Oh my gosh, I forgot to do that. And so
Yes.
and so that's going to interfere with your sleep as well. So there's a little technique that I suggest in the book, and that is to just pick something special, pick a stone, a crystal,
Mhm.
anything that is special to you. And after you make your bed in the morning, and hopefully you do make your bed in the morning so that that room is welcoming when you come back in,
Right.
put that on your pillow, put that little special stone on your pillow or whatever that little thing is to
Mhm.
remind you when you get into bed to think about, do a review of your day and think about pick out the three best things that happened to you during your day.
Oh,
Maybe
that's
it
nice.
was maybe it was a call from your grandmother,
Mhm.
or maybe it was a colleague who came to help you with a project. You
Mhm.
know, maybe it was your dog reading you when you walked in the door. You know how our dogs are, they're always so happy and they're always so glad to see us. So you pick out at least three things that were really special about your day, and then from those things, choose the one that was the most special. And what that'll do is that'll set you up. You're in a really good spot now. You feel good, right?
Yeah.
And that'll set you up for a good, restful night's sleep.
That's beautiful. I love that. Instead of stressing yourself out over what you didn't achieve.
And we all do it, right?
Yeah.
We all do it. We all
Sure.
climb into bed and we're, instead of relaxing, our mind just takes over. So that's a way to kind of control your mind so you don't fall into that stressful pattern.
Yes.
Um, Another one that I use is I tend to listen to audiobooks.
That's a great one.
Although I do this on a very old cell phone that's no longer connected to
Good. Good.
the outside world. It doesn't ring. It can't. Um, and then if you like Audible, I don't know about Apple Books because I don't use Apple Books, but Audible has a timer.
Oh,
So
that.
I'll put on an audio book, and it has to be the right audio book. Okay. You don't want to be listening to a drama.
Oh, nothing
And,
that read.
and then I set the timer for 30 minutes. And that's another thing that will capture my thoughts because I'm listening to the book. And so it'll shut down that mind chatter. And I wake up in the morning and I hardly ever remember hearing the book shut off.
That's great.
So it
Yeah.
goes for 30 minutes and then and if I am a little bit more stressed, then I'll set the book for 45 minutes. Yeah. So yeah, there are a lot of techniques and there are more techniques in the workbook as well.
Great. For season 4 of the Cult of Kindness podcast in particular, it's been about self-kindness, and you write about nurturing your greatest relationship, which is yourself, the self-love connection. If you could just help inform people about how important that is. So many people neglect themselves.
Yeah. And so that's a natural that's another natural pattern, especially for women, because, we've been designated the caregivers.
Sure.
And so it's very easy to overdo and not allow others to stand on their own 2 feet. Okay, so we give and we give, we give, we give to the point of exhaustion. And again, that will lead to a chronic health condition. And let's just look at human behavior. Let's say you're dealing with a spouse or a child, an adult child or a young child, it doesn't matter. We can very easily get stuck in patterns. And if I know you're going to do everything for me, if I know you're going to make my bed and cook my meals and maybe even do my homework, I'm going to let you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would I ever think of stopping you? So self-care is something that we really need to pay attention to. And when you truly love yourself, you will make self-care a priority.
That's right.
Because just like when you get on an airplane and they are going over the safety information and they tell you very clearly, put your oxygen mask on first before assisting others.
Yeah.
You have to look at the long-term picture. If you're going to wear yourself out caring for others, and some people actually have that as their profession. So nurses, people like that, nurses, doctors, therapists, physical therapists. And then you come home and you continue that pattern inside the home. You're just going to wear yourself down to nothing, and you're going to open yourself up to a chronic health condition. And at that point, you're not going to be any good to anyone, including yourself.
Yes, exactly.
So self-care, self-love, and again, if you truly care and love yourself, you'll figure out ways to get these habits under control.
Right.
Okay.
Or learn the hard way, which no one wants.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want that.
No. If you could help to emphasize the importance on a larger health-based level of self-care. And I think you really did touch on the fact that, if you are a nurse, you come home and you're at 20%, and then you don't take 5 minutes. I think that people don't necessarily connect the dots that this will affect your health. They'll just think, oh, I'm tired, I'll go to Starbucks, but it is going to affect your health ultimately. You can't put a Band-Aid on that. And I think that people don't get that. It's going to be long-term effects if you don't look at what's happening.
Yeah. So, and I got to see that very clearly. Prior to the pandemic, I had a contract with my local hospital. I was working with the nurse leaders on mind, body, spirit healing and self-care. Okay,
Mhm.
so there's an assessment that I'm certified in. I talk about the assessment in the book as well. It's called the Energy Leadership Index Assessment. And it
Okay.
measures where your energy is going. And so there are 7 levels of energy. Level 1 is that victim mentality. And
Mm.
you mentioned that person earlier that's never going to come off their disability because they really like those secondary gains.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
so that's the level 1, the victim mentality. And then and admittedly I was there. So, we all go there on occasion.
Right.
Um and then there's level 7, which is where you go when you pray and you meditate, and it's that euphoria where the whole world just turns into a great big ball of love, right? Somewhere in the middle is level 4 energy, and we call that caregiver energy.
Mm.
So in my work with the nurses, they all took the assessment, and across the board, um, every one of them, level 4 energy was their primary level of energy. So
Oh,
before they do anything else, they are taking care of other people.
beautiful. That's
And
beautiful.
that's admirable, but it opens you up to becoming run down,
Yeah.
exhausted, caught in
Yeah.
fight or flight, and being taken advantage of.
Mm. So true. Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes they don't even see that because they're so dedicated to what
They
they're
don't.
hurt. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, they don't see it.
Mm.
So it's something important to look out for.
Yes. I just
Yeah.
wanted you to really emphasize that because personally it's like, oh, even for myself, it's something I really need to dial into. So thank you
Yeah.
for emphasizing that.
And
Uh,
if I may add just one more thing to that, even in
sure.
my personal practice,
Yes.
when my clients participate in the Energy Leadership Index Assessment,
Mhm.
every client I have had who has a chronic health condition, also level 4 energy is their primary level of energy, which is not good. We want level 4 energy, but we don't want it at the top. We want
Yeah.
it a little bit further down the scale. So it's a really good indicator of where our energy is going and how
Mm.
we're contributing to our own demise.
Oh gosh. Yeah. That's scary, but yeah. If you could explain the placebo nocebo effect, I really like that.
Yeah, so the placebo effect, hopefully people are experiencing that, or I know everybody has experienced it. Um, uh, Maybe as a child, you had a cut or a bruise or a cough or whatever, and your parent didn't really have the right thing, but said, this will do the trick. Let me
Mhm.
put this on you and the pain is going to go away. And
Mhm.
because of your trust and belief in the person who's telling you that information, miraculously the pain does go away.
Yeah.
So we know that the placebo effect exists. They
Mhm.
study it all the time. They'll
Mhm.
take 2 groups of people and they'll give one person the actual drug. They'll give the other person a sugar pill,
Yeah.
and people in the placebo group will respond to the
Mhm.
drug when they're just getting nothing, right?
Amazing.
So that's the placebo effect, and it has to do with your belief. Your mind is so incredibly powerful.
Right.
It can take you either way.
Mhm.
One of the books that I mentioned is oh my gosh, her name is Dr. Lisa Rankin, and the book is Mind Over Medicine.
Okay.
And I'm always reading because I'm always trying to educate myself so I can better help my clients. And
Yeah.
she mentions in that book that just having a physician, or today we often see nurse practitioners, just having a healthcare professional that you trust will get you well,
Mhm.
kicks on the placebo effect.
That's very
And so you can be really, really sick and maybe you've got the flu or whatever, and you call your physician and make an appointment, and then suddenly you start feeling better. And that's and it has happened to me. And I used to wonder about that. I would say, you know, all I have to do is drive to her office and I start feeling better. It's so bizarre. And then I read about it in the book and I began to understand why. So that's the placebo effect, and it's very powerful. If you believe something is going to work, your mind is just going to make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. I'm also
Yeah.
familiar with that book. It's amazing.
Oh, you read that book too?
I
Yeah.
did.
It's a
Yeah,
great book. Yeah, great
it
book.
is. Yes. Uh, well, I want to end by taking a moment to say how much I love, and this is a little spoiler, but not telling. I just love how you end the book with the beginning. That is fantastic. I love that.
Yes, because it's a powerful journey about self-discovery. So
Yeah,
when you
that was,
when you pick up this book, it's just it's going to take you on a powerful journey.
it really is.
And yeah, and your healing is the beginning.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I was like, I definitely have to make sure that I mention that because that was fantastic. Just ending it that way.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, Teresa, you're always so delightful. I hope to have you on next June. I don't know what we discuss, but it's a tradition now at this point.
Okay. Well, we'll have to plan on that. So I
We
don't
will.
know, you know, maybe this summer I'll think about writing another book,
Yeah.
but I thank you from the bottom of my heart for reading the book
Yes.
and providing a review for me. And now this, having me on your podcast is just such an honor.
Oh, absolutely. It was my pleasure to read the book. Definitely a wonderful resource that I highly recommend to everyone. Whether you are in a state of being concerned about your health or being recently diagnosed, it's just great information for us to know. Even should we find ourselves in that position, it's great to know. So thank you very much.
I would say read it now.
Exactly. Don't wait until, yeah.
Yeah, use it as a preventative.
Exactly, exactly. Uh, well, again, everyone, I hope that you enjoyed this special crossover episode for Cult of Kindness as well as Beauty's Aging Gracefully. And Teresa, again, thank you so very much.
Very welcome. My honor.
Mm,
Bye,
take care.
everybody. Okay.